What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2. And while, as y'all know, it is Wednesday, which means a new summit is now live. And for this week, guys, we have the best of USST next, which I would say is going to be one of the most interesting summits we have ever seen. But before we jump into that, though, let's go take a look at the upcoming summits and their rewards. So, in this one, guys, we have the Evolution Tire, which does look kind of interesting. I would say something like that in a monster truck would probably look hilarious, but in gold, we have a Red Bull RB13, which I would say a lot of players own this. And if you guys do, you will luckily get the money back for this vehicle as well. But moving over to the next summit, guys, is going to have the Alfa Romeo 4C, Serpente Indaggione. I think I'm going to get closer on this. We're almost to the summit, guys. Do not worry, I'm going to get this down. But in gold, we have the Italian Nitro, which I do think also looks pretty cool. And then in silver, we have the legendary half set boosted for the Alpha GP cars, which I would say any Nitrochemist set is going to be insanely useful. So I'm interested to see how that set is going to work on the Alpha GP vehicles. And then moving over to the summit here, guys, you're going to notice a nice mix of events where you also get to test out the Alfa Romeo. And it does look like we're going to have a monster truck race and or a stunt event as well. So hopefully that's going to be a race because we did just have one of those stunt events recently, and if I did have to guess, I would say a lot of players are most likely not the biggest fan of those, but the next summit is going to bring us the Purple Earthbreaker tire, which is probably going to be one of the craziest tires we actually have in the game at the moment. And funnily enough, that's also going to be the name of this summit as well. And I also did notice the Combi bus also making a return, guys, which funnily enough is actually going to be the fastest bus in the Crew 2 at the moment. I will most likely do an updated video on that bus in the near future after this summit, but in gold we have the legendary half set boosted for the street cars, and the Fame Magnet set is actually one of my favorite sets to run when I'm basically messing around in these races. I normally do run a Fame Magnet in the touring cars and or the hypercar category, at least when I'm trying to grind out some extra money and or followers, so I would definitely recommend going after that one, guys. But the next summit's going to be Open Days. This summit is also going to bring us a chance to get the Porsche Carrera GT Green Flash Edition, which is probably one of my favorite looking cars in one of these summits. For one, guys, this thing is going to resemble the Gambala Mirage GT in real life, and that is by far one of the most beautiful body kits on a car in general, so this thing isn't going to look exactly like it, but it is going to be pretty dang close, so if you guys haven't gotten this car, I would definitely recommend going after it. And then in gold, we have the Berlinetto, which I would probably say a lot of players most likely already own this vehicle. I did notice you also get money back for the vanity items, but I would probably say the Italian Nitro might not be new, but it most likely isn't. Honestly, who really knows with that? But moving back over to this summit, I also noticed you will be able to get yourself a Nitrochemist boosted for the Rallycross vehicles. Even though it's most likely only going to be one or two parts, at least it can be kind of helpful. Overall though, guys, the upcoming summits are looking pretty dang awesome, and I can't wait to see more information on Season 9. But moving over to the summit here, guys, starting off with the Buoy Smash. So for this one, I once again decided to run the Vector V40R. I would also say you guys could most likely run like the 1414 Demon. My friend also used the Blade Runner as well and still got 155k. So I would probably say on this Buoy Smashing, you can most likely use the Demon and or the Vector, or something like the Blade Runner as well, so it does seem like you guys can run a couple of different boats on this one, and I would probably go as far as saying is this is going to be one of the easier buoy smashes in the Crew 2, so at least you can run different boats to actually get that one completed. But moving over to the next one, guys, is going to be an Escape, and for this one, I once again decided to run the Concept Pulse Performance here on one of the Escapes. I would probably say you're most likely going to see Bugattis and or a lot of hypercars on this one, but one of my favorite things about the Pulse Performance and or the new Alpha GP vehicles is the fact that most of these can actually do well over 300 miles per hour, similar to the hypercars. So all you guys really have to do on this one is get around like 11,000 yards, and you're basically going to be well above 155k. So at least a lot of these normally are going to be pretty lenient, and I would recommend using an Alpha GP vehicle over like a hypercar, mainly because of that handling. But moving over to the last skill is also going to be an aerobatics. So for this one, guys, I did use the Zivko Edge 540 V3. And the main reason for that is just going to be how good this plane really is overall. To be honest though, I would probably say you guys can run basically any air race plane on these. I really do feel like the aerobatic skills are probably going to be the easiest in the entire game. As long as you actually have a score breaker, say you can normally get well over 150k, and it also does come down to how the scoring works on that specific one as well. Sometimes you can barely hit 150 and other times you hit like 157. It really does depend how that one is going to be, but moving over to the actual summit now, guys. So most of these events, well, 5 of them are actually going to be all on the new Alpha GP racetrack. So this is definitely going to be pretty interesting. So on this one, guys, and or the other touring vehicle one as well, it is going to be no restriction. And of course, when it does normally say no restriction, that's basically a cue for me to pick a car that you're most likely never going to see in one of these. So I did pick the Ferrari F40 LM, which is probably not going to be the greatest option. I would also say it's not going to be the slowest one either because the Ferrari really is pretty decent. And for me, guys, the Ferrari F40 has one of the best sounding engines, especially when you are shifting it. But if you guys were wondering, you're most likely only going to see the Saleen S7R. And the main reason for that is the Saleen does have an insanely high top speed around 270 miles per hour. So it's basically going to make this car a lot faster than many of the other ones. And of course, when you are hitting the boosters, that is probably going to be around 10 to 15 miles per hour faster, which really is going to make a difference in a lot of the areas of these events. But I would recommend trying some of the cars out, guys, like the Ferrari F40. I would probably say some of these oddball vehicles really are going to be pretty decent. But when it comes to this street event, though, you are going to be using the FTO GP, which I would probably say is not going to be the greatest street car out there. But to my surprise, guys, this car really did do pretty decent on this one. I would probably recommend being careful on those turns, though, because my goodness, this car really doesn't turn that great. But moving over to the next event, though, you guys will have to use the Maserati MC20, which I do recall this car being slightly buffed a bit ago, so luckily it's not going to be insanely terrible. And to be honest, guys, I would actually say the MC20 is going to be pretty dang good overall. This car really does handle insanely well, plus it's also going to be insanely fast. And of course, hitting the boosters, the car was doing around 320, so it really is going to be a lot of fun with these cars on these racetracks. And for this one, I decided to run the Camaro Z28, and I would probably say you guys can easily do this one with like the Enforcer unit, and or like the Camaro Z28 as well, and or like the WRC05. And the main reason why I say that is all the cars really are going to have a pretty similar top speed, with many of the Rallycross vehicles doing around 190. So the biggest thing about this is definitely hit those boosters. And I do want to give you guys a couple of tips on these 5 events as well. So one thing I did notice about these Alpha GP races, and that's going to come down to the boosters. I did notice, guys, this goes for all 5 of these events as well. So when you guys are hitting those boosters, make sure you're getting all 4 of those tires on them, because I did notice if you hit one with 2, I actually did find the cars not to get as much of a boost. So definitely try to aim for all 4 of those tires hitting the boosters. And I would also recommend doing all 5 of these events in automatic as well. I really did find this to be so much easier than manual. Plus, you're also not going to be struggling, and you can actually keep the speed up a lot easier on these events. So I would definitely recommend using automatic on these, and try to get all 4 of those tires on those boosters, because it really does help tremendously, especially on the Rallycross event here, because a lot of the cars are slower. So hitting the boosters with the Rallycross vehicles is going to be insanely important, mainly because you do have to keep your speed up. But overall, guys, I did find most of these events to be pretty dang fun, even though some of them are kind of odd. I would definitely prefer not to use the FTO on that race, but hopefully we can actually mix up some of these events in the future. But moving over to the last event, guys, is luckily not one of those Alpha GP races. Instead, you will have to use an Alpha GP vehicle in one of the new USST city races. And to be honest, guys, I was kind of concerned when I did see this event, but I actually found this one to be insanely fun, because you really can go a lot faster than you think. And luckily, the Mark X is, of course, going to be insanely good on this track as well. And it does turn out using one of these Alpha GP cars in one of these city races really is going to be a lot of fun. I would recommend guys using manual as well because it definitely does help, especially with the tight corners. And my goodness, I would actually love to run these cars on these races in the future. So let's hope we can actually mix some of them up. But nonetheless, guys, I really do think this summit is going to be pretty dang interesting. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more insight.
you